Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. It's SEPTANDY again, so you know what that means. You're going to get force-fed non-stop Tandy content whether you want it or not. This year, the lineup is huge, along with Tech Tangents, Adrian's Digital Basement, and Mr. Lurch's Things. This year, we're joined by Josh Malone, The Retro Channel, Jan Beta, Mindflare Retro, and Retrospector. Oh, and LGR, you may have heard of him. This year, I sit down with the legendary Ken Williams of Sierra Online infamy to talk about Sierra's involvement with the Tandy. That's right, the Ken Williams. It's not every day you sit down with a childhood hero. I honestly would have been content just to have a chat with him, but the pretense of an interview makes it way less creepy. Incidentally, Ken has a book coming out this coming October called Not All Fairy Tales Have Happy Endings. Because Ken is a class act, he has graciously supplied me with 2 copies of his book to give away. All you have to do is leave a comment below talking about your first experience with Tandy Computers, Sierra Online, or both. On September 30th, I'll randomly choose 2 winners and you will be getting a copy in the mail.
Thanks for tuning in. I'd like to introduce you to gaming industry pioneer and founder of the iconic Sierra Online, Ken Williams. Hey, Ken, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Oh, just surviving. I know you've been on a ship for the last decade or two. With all this pandemic stuff. Have you guys thought about just staying on the ship, or?
Yeah, no, a ship would be the right place to be right now. About 20 miles offshore, and I don't know. Yeah, we're here on land in Seattle, quarantined, I guess, and wishing we were elsewhere.
Oh, yes, same here. I'm in LA, and everyone's pretty much indoors still for the most part. So, any case, the way I want to preface this interview, right? We all know that Roberta has gone down in history as a storyteller, the pioneer of the adventure game. The Coles, Al Lowe, Jim Walls, the 2 guys from Andromeda. These guys, they have a place too, but to a lesser extent. People don't understand that all these stories and all these ideas, they had to be grounded in a much less exciting substrate, right? Someone had to build the technology. Someone had to build a company around all this, capable of packaging and marketing a product. So someone had to make sure all the bills were paid, all the payroll was done, right? This is the important stuff. Now, I hear you have a book coming out. After all these years, it seems like everything has come full circle. Maybe you have a story to tell now.
Oh, yeah, I do have a book coming out. It's partially because of the virus. We had originally planned on being on a boat all summer, but because of the virus, the factory that was building a new boat for us was shut down for 4 months. So suddenly we had a summer with nothing to do, and Roberta suddenly said, "Why don't you write a book?" And at first I thought I'd write something I don't know, fictional or something. But then it's tough when you stare at a blank sheet of paper and try to do something. And it turned out the only thing I kind of really knew was boats and computers. And I'd already written a few boat books, so Sierra it was. I started writing, and it's a different book in that I was writing about it from the perspective of being running a fairly large software company, and so I don't know. Yeah, it reads more like a management book or a business book than it does a fantasy book. So hopefully people will like that. I guess if they're curious what made Sierra Sierra, then that's what's there. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it'll give a different outlook on the company. Everyone's familiar with the games and how the games came to be, but I think there's a lot of important stuff. People like the sausage, but they don't always appreciate the sausage making, right? I think you've heard of that before. So you started writing this summer?
Yeah, Roberta's been working on a book for 5 years, and I did it all in 3 months. And although it's it's in a way it's a story that's 40 years in the making, so there's a lot of history there, and it's pretty easy to wedge 25 years into 400 pages. All you have to do is cherry pick a few things, and suddenly all the pages are there.
I mean, I saw the table of contents. It's pretty complete. I mean, you cover a lot of material. That's very surprising. Did Roberta do any editing for the book, or is this all on your own?
Oh, yeah. In fact, you notice here's chapter on Phantaz, and there's her comments on every single page.
Oh, nice.
In fact, I'm sure it averages probably 3 a paragraph. So wow. She's Roberta is highly opinionated. So.
Yes, we can appreciate that. So let me address the elephant in the room. Right, sometime in '96, Sierra was sold to CUC International, if I'm correct. I think that combined with Sendit later on. Right, then sometime in February of 1999 came what they call Chainsaw Monday, or Black Monday, when all the layoffs came. Do you remember how you felt that day, and what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I was horrified, and sad, but I was pretty disconnected from the company at that point. Somebody had to call and tell me. I wasn't plugged in at all.
Okay.
And when they told me, I wrote that letter that's still kind of, I think, on the Sierra Gamer site, and it's been passed around the internet for years. Yeah, because it was. I mean, people don't realize how bad it was. In that, if the company had been located in San Francisco or Seattle or New York, it wouldn't have been quite so traumatic for the employees. But imagine living at Yosemite and there's only one computer job anywhere within 50 miles, and suddenly the company shuts down. So I was, and I don't remember how many people in Oakhurst lost their job that day, but I think it was 300, 350, something like that. And that's just horrible. I mean, horrible. I mean, what are those people going to do? And I'm sure there were bankruptcies and destroyed families, destroyed marriages. I mean, everything bad that could happen. So that was kind of the first thing I thought about, was the people. I mean, I felt bad for the customers, but really it was more the people that were creating the products that were the first thing that came to mind. So,
okay. I mean, I read a few accounts, and I'm sure that when you received that deal in the beginning, you did all this, I think, for the future of Sierra, because no one goes into this thinking, hey, someone's going to chop the company up and do terrible things to it. I think you probably had all the best intentions, and this happened, right? It was an end to something I think that was very exciting for everyone. Now, I want to dovetail that, and I'm going to come back to actually Oakhurst in a bit, but I kind of want to dovetail that into another topic that I want to address in this video. It's this started last year, but some other YouTube content creators and myself, we've been doing this thing every September. This is the second year. We call it SEPTANDY, which is to celebrate the Tandy and the Radio Shack computers. So I remember as a kid, right, going to Radio Shack, and I would see top billing for Sierra titles. You guys had your own custom end caps. You had your games running on the computers. And it was pretty exclusive. I mean, how did that deal come about?
Well, it was, I'll tell you, it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. There's a lot about it in the book, so I'm fairly
I can't wait
right now. But it really happened because of the IBM PC Junior. We happened to have a relationship with IBM where they had published Adventures in Serenia, which actually was nothing more than a renamed Wizard and Apprentice for the IBM PC. And then they came to us one day and said, this is top secret, but we're working on a new computer called the Peanut. They called it at the time. And it became later the PC Junior. But it had, more memory. It had 128K of memory. It had floppy disk drives, which were kind of unheard of at the time, or not many computers had them. Had fairly powerful processor, and it had, most importantly, 16 color graphics. And we had been hamstrung with the Apple II and with the PC using CGA at the time graphics. And a few PCs had EGA graphics, but even those were pretty bad. So we were excited about the PC Junior, and went under the secrecy agreement, and it came at a good time for Sierra because we were struggling as a company. We'd had layoff. We had diverted a lot of energy to video game systems and doing cartridges for ColecoVision, TI-99, Commodore 64, Atari 400, all of which bombed. I mean, there came a point in the market back in, I think, 83 or 84 where the market collapsed and kind of took us with it. But when IBM came to us and said, maybe you could do a string of products for the PNet, and we'll give you some nice royalty advances, that was the right thing at the right time. So we built a bunch of products, including King's Quest One. King's Quest One wouldn't have happened without IBM. Mm-hmm. And so we put all that money in. We built these great games, and of course, the PC Junior bombed. And within almost immediately, when the PC Junior bombed, I realized that the Tandy 1000 that they were talking about had roughly the same hardware as the PC Junior, but with an infinitely better keyboard. And
I hated that keyboard.
Huh?
I hated the
real keyboard.
I have one.
With a clunky, they called it a chiclet keyboard. Right?
Unusable.
People called it. So, I actually met with several times with the CEO of Radio Shack, John Roach, and he was excited to have some product that showed off his new machine. And because Sierra had been under the secrecy agreement with IBM, we had quietly built all this software for the what became the same specs as the Tandy 1000, or close enough. And we were sitting there on day one when the Tandy 1000 came out with lots of good product, and it worked for everybody. We had already moved over. Our products all used a common language to develop them that was an internally developed language called SCI at that time. That was an interpretive language, we called it. Mm-hmm. And it was done to provide a level of platform independence, so we could put a game on multiple platforms simultaneously. It was, today they call them engines, and most games are built using some engine that gives them some platform independence. We were a little ahead of the time in doing that, clear back in the early 80s. So we were able to migrate pretty much our whole product line to the Tandy 1000 at a time when other people were just spinning up to speed. So Tandy and us needed each other, and we were there at the right time. And we suddenly had distribution in 6,000 outlets when our customers were kind of caught. our competitors were kind of caught flat-footed with no product to sell. So it went beautiful.
Now, this kind of coincided with the video game crash too, right? I mean, at that point, I read that Tandy and Radio Shack kind of saved your bacon a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. It happened right when Atari was allegedly burying ET cartridges out in the desert because they got caught with inventory. We did too, and the inventory for video game systems is expensive stuff. And we suddenly we had cartridges that we had $15 and $20 a piece invested in, that you had to buy 5,000 or 10,000 at a time. Mm-hmm. And we had it times several games, times several platforms, and it just wiped us out. The company was really running on Roberta and Mai's checking account and our credit cards. So, IBM's development advances kind of put us back in action. And King's Quest, that was really the product that was the home run for us. And and sold well. Well, and we also had the Disney products. And the Disney products, we had Mickey's Space Adventure and Donald's Playground, Winnie the Pooh, Lost in a 100-Acre Woods. And those products were a natural for Radio Shack stores. So we were able to give Radio Shack kind of a complete lineup. And it was, the other thing that played into all this was that IBM at the time had gone through a huge lawsuit with the government, where the government was trying to break IBM up. Mm. So IBM, in signing contracts, was the strangest negotiation someone could ever do, because they had to be careful not to have any contract that said that they would have any exclusivity. So they, had to actually kind of tell everybody, please promise you won't give anything to us exclusively. No matter what it is, you have to promise to offer it to other people too, which is the strangest thing I'd ever seen in a contract. And had it not been for that, we would have probably been wiped out, because it was our ability to walk across the street when the PC Junior bombed and sell it through Tandy that was the great thing for and if you think about it, Microsoft profited from that same thing. I'm sure they were signing the same contract as we were at roughly the same time for a product called DAWs that they weren't able to offer exclusively to IBM because IBM wouldn't take anything exclusively. So it was a funny time. I remember when computers used to be called IBM compatible, and now everything thinks of it as a Windows compatible computer. IBM kind of created the market, but Microsoft was there to sweep it up, I guess, and us too. I mean, we certainly worked out good because of that.
Now, going back to all that excess inventory you mentioned, now, if you notice, I'm quite a collector, right?
Yeah, I know. I see a lot of our inventory on your shelf.
What happened to all the excess stuff? Is it buried in a desert somewhere, like what Atari did, or did you? What'd you guys do with all that?
I don't know. I think there are liquidators, and we probably gave it to them and sold it for 50 cents a unit or something, and they moved it. I mean, I assume. I don't remember what we did. I kind of probably said to a guy named Bob Wharton, who was running our manufacturing, or Rick Cavan, and said, "Get rid of this, and I don't want to see it, and you figure it out."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I was more interested in getting the games going, and yeah, and there was quite a bit. We actually did a word processor for IBM as part of it too, called Homeward. That was the first icon-based word processor. So I mean, it was a lot. We gave them a Crossfire, Mineshaft, King's Quest. It was a good product line. So.
Now, I assume with this relationship with Tandy and with Radio Shack, were you able to, let's say, you or Chris wanted like a new computer, were you able to pick up the phone, give someone a call, and say, "Hey, can you send me a new Tandy 1000 SL like this guy here," and it shows up at your door, or did you have to go order one like everyone else?
Oh, I think we ordered one like everyone else, but I'm not sure. I mean, hardware companies were pretty cheap at giving away free hardware. I probably I remember when we got our development system from IBM for the PC Junior, it was actually just a normal PC with a custom graphics card in it. So, but probably we only got one or two. It was always kind of a problem building for new machines, because we would get one machine or two machines, and we'd have 10 programmers that all needed it. So everybody would have to take turns. I think the Tandy 1000 must have been market ready. I think that Tandy was building it in the back room as their answer to the PC Junior. It kept it pretty quiet until announcement, because I don't remember hearing about it until the rumors of its release. I think it was already well built. We weren't in on it when it was a secret project. So,
well, I'm glad you brought up the programmers, because I want to get back and talk a little bit about your interpreter, right? So you mentioned SCI, and before SCI was AGI, right? Your adventure game interpreter. So presumably you have all these assets, you have all this game development that then went to, I assume, some kind of transpiler that would write it to bytecode for all these different platforms that you supported, right? I noticed aside from the Tandy 1000, you had several titles for the Coco. For the Tandy color computer. Now, I don't remember if those came before or after King's Quest, but I know that you ported several titles, and you ported, I believe, some of the Japanese games over too. And I remember reading that some of those machines had limitations. Like I think Leisure Suit Larry, when you had to move, the music would stop playing because the machine can't handle all that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's definitely true. Yeah, on some of those machines, we had to recode in assembler because they were gutless machines. I mean, in some ways, our compiler helped, because we compiled to what we used to call P code, because Pascal at the time was a C-like language that worked kind of the same way, and it would compile to P code and have an interpreter, and it was part of where I got the idea from. But the problem with an interpretive language is it's a pig. It tends to be a little bit slower. It'll be real condensed and offer platform independence and processor independence, but it also comes with being slow.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of those machines, we had to recode an assembler,
But
and that was the only option.
If you think back then, no one was thinking this. I mean, this is pretty revolutionary. I mean, other designers, if they were approached by IBM to say, "Hey, we want you to make us a game," they sit down and write a game. You sat down and wrote an interpreter, right? I mean, like what was the defining moment? Like how did you decide on that?
Oh, well, I mean, that's true. I guess King's Quest was done for AGI, and AGI was developed for IBM. I thought like that from the beginning. Even Mystery House was done in an interpretive manner. That goes clear back to 1979. So it was my prior life had been as a compiler developer working on a language called Mark IV, but also worked on a COBOL compiler and a Fortran compiler. So I was pretty used to thinking in terms of application layers and device independence and a lot of things that weren't really out of the computer game realm at those days. So and AGI, I mean, the way I arrived at it was more out of necessity, in that the simplistic language that we'd used on Mystery House was already overextended to even do Mystery House. I needed something that was more of a procedural type language, and that had if, then, else statements, and what also event driven commands, so that I could say, when this door finishes closing, execute this other piece of code.
On an Apple II. Wow.
I needed a true procedural language. And that was SCI. And then actually SCI that was AGI. And AGI became SCI when, a lot of the code was the same, but the big innovation was that it became object-oriented.
I have read that.
So SCI was kind of the object-oriented. And actually, the truth is that I had never heard of object-oriented. I predated it. And hired a guy named Jeff Stevenson, who was a more recent college graduate who had studied things in his computer science program, like object-oriented languages. And he looked at AGI and said it was kind of prehistoric, and had this great idea for how we could make it object-oriented. And I had no clue what that meant. And Jeff kind of educated me and ran the team to kind of bring us out of the Stone Ages with a more modern language. And AGI was great and took us a long ways, and then SCI took us the rest of the way.
Now, SCI had some legs on it. I mean, because I know that you had several revisions lasting way into the VGA games, right? And you added sound support, you added all this stuff. And, I'm curious, like, did you guys have your own IDE and development environment, or was everyone just using something else and it goes into some pipeline for your builds?
Now, we had our own IDE in the early days, but then toward the end, people were using, I assume they were using Dreamweaver and a few other products like that weren't wired into the language, but were good for editing source code. So, but I don't know. I don't remember. It's been 25 years. I don't know how far back those products go.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, today, right? Like stuff like source control and version control and automated builds is a big deal. I mean, people take that for granted, but for you, you're maintaining several product lines. Each game is available for multiple platforms. How do you handle the version control? I mean, the early days, I read the story about you guys, during the Atari lawsuit, you guys were hiding computers in the trunks of your car. But at some point, you have to have like a formalized process. It can't be just living on a floppy disk somewhere, right? So how did you manage all that?
Well, it lived on a floppy, and we lost things from time to time. I mean, there was no cloud-based anything in those days. It was, right at the end, those things were coming in, but there was no internet. I mean, even at the time we sold the company, the internet was just coming along. And that was, I remember John Harris, who did, God, my throat is shot today. But when John Harris was doing Frogger, I think it was Frogger, he lost the source code and was in a funk. And it took months to kind of get him going again. because it's hard to put so much effort into anything and see it wiped out. And he just, the disk wouldn't load, nothing more. So, I mean, backup in those days was copying a floppy. I mean, it's not the modern world. Although we were using, I'm trying to remember, there was a source management system we used right at the very end, but it wasn't, like today with Git files or, nothing. I mean, it was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in the beginning, there were no utilities. I mean, we're talking about IDEs. I mean, in the beginning, it was if you wanted a text editor, you had to write it. If you wanted a simple paint program, you had to write it. So if you wanted to put things on a floppy, I mean, I remember having to write the device drivers to talk to the floppy. I wrote or my team, I guess, wrote the original device drivers for like the AdLib sound card when it came out. We had to write our own MIDI drivers. I mean, everything.
Wow,
so it was a different world.
Well, speaking of John Harris, now I've read Stephen Levy's book Hackers, right? That's kind of one of the most detailed accounts of the early days at Sierra, and through that, and through other interviews I've heard, they said you have a reputation of being a great manager, and you had a knack for just fighting people seemingly at random, and some people that weren't necessarily programmers, and you would groom them to become game designers and programmers, right? Now, why did you do that? Wouldn't it have been easier just to hire experienced programmers?
Yes, but where? No, in the early days, it's funny. Even for the first few years of Sierra, I didn't have a proper respect for what we did. I came out of the mainframe IBM 360 world, and had already had kind of a long career in that world. And video games weren't taken seriously at the time. It was kind of nobody would have thought it could ever actually be a career and people could earn money doing it. It was and part of the theme of Stephen King's book was that this was kind of a hacker type world, and people shouldn't be trying to make money off of selling computer games. That I was kind of the villain of the story in that book because I was trying to monetize what these kids were doing. So nobody was going to quit a job at Boeing or it wasn't a Microsoft, but McDonnell Douglas or somebody to take a job programming video games. It wasn't an industry. It was, the kind of programmers. Well, and also there was a problem in where we were located because we were up in Yosemite, and nobody was going to quit a job to move to Yosemite to accept a job as a computer programmer.
Besides you.
Wasn't already there. Yeah, I mean, Roberta and I did it, but it was kind of because we wanted to escape LA. So who we were really hiring was, kids like Rourke Wygant. I forget which game he developed, but he was, I think, 16 when we hired him, and his parents brought him up and kind of looked at me like, "You're going to take good care of my kid, aren't you?" And and hopefully we did. But not completely.
That was actually my plan when I was in junior high school. I was going to run away from home and get a bus ticket and find my way up north and knock on your door and get a job.
But that wasn't how it was. Yeah, we had we almost considered it a frat house where a lot of the young kids lived. That we had one house we rented. I forget how many kids were there, but Stephen Levy lived in that house with them when he was writing his book Hackers for a while. And the industry matured pretty quickly. All that really ended after the first 3 or 4 years or 2 years. And then suddenly the industry got a little more serious, and I was able to hire people. And by the end, obviously we were kind of the place to go to work in video games, and everybody wanted to work for us. And there was a new recognition that it's funny. I mean, in the beginning, I thought of business programming as superior to game programming, but obviously that flipped. And these days, the best engineers in the world are the guys doing the video games. And in fact, with the guys that are programming accounting systems are really looked down on as kind of the bottom of the pecking order in terms of software development, because it's well, at least to me. I mean, I'm sure there's those that would disagree, but doing a 3D flight simulator where you've got bullets going through the air, and like Red Baron or Ace in the Pacific. I mean, to me, that's about as that's kind of the pinnacle of software development.
So, speaking of other developers, right? In the book Masters of Doom, I read that a little while ago, and that book provides an account of when you tried to buy id Software, the John Romero and John Carmack, right? And in that book, I mean, I'm not sure how it went down. I don't want to misrepresent anyone, but they had some unflattering things to say about Sierra's programmers and your technology in general, right? And I noticed that you have a chapter in your book that details the same event. So what's your side of the story?
Well, I mean, they're right. Those guys were geniuses and presumably still are. I mean, when I first saw Wolfenstein 3D and Doom and products like that, I mean, I was just blown away. Although to be fair, I mean, we were doing, I already said an interpretive type language can be a pig. And when you're interpreting code as opposed to executing machine language, it's going to run less efficiently. And that's fine for an adventure game. But if you're going to do a 3D action game, you need to be right at the machine level doing lots of tricks to make the machine. Because in those days, there was no 3D hardware. Today, I mean, you define a 3D structure to the hardware, and the hardware knows about it and will do a lot of the work for you, offloading the processor. A modern computer has a graphics card, and the graphics card knows what to do. But in those days, we had a single processor, and it had to do all the work. And and to pull off a game like Doom with no hardware assistance is incredible. And I agree with them. I mean, they, our later acquisition of Dynamics was because I didn't think I had any programmers who could handle the 3D math, including myself. I mean, I was a pretty good engineer, but when I look at what Dynamics was doing with Aces Over Europe or Red Baron, I mean, that's pretty incredible stuff. And once again, that was in the days before there was hardware assist. Doing it today would be a much simpler exercise. And when I look at, I just installed the other day Microsoft Flight Simulator on my computer, and you look at
amazing.
It and think, that looks real to me. There's scenes in that where you look out the window and you think, is this a movie or is this a game? And that's pretty incredible. Hardware has come a long ways. So,
did you fly over your house yet? A lot of people are doing that.
No, I will. I'm still on. The darn thing took 95 gigabytes on my hard drive to install and took a long time. And I'm still on like the very first lesson, but I'm looking forward to really digging into it.
Nice. So let me ask you, do you still code today?
I code almost every day up until like 90 days ago because I had started a venture to do basically a competitor to WordPress, and worked at it for a decade. I really kind of started it thinking it'd be an easy project that I could hand off to one of my kids and just fill time on a couple of weekends. But it's tough to compete with WordPress. They're pretty entrenched. And so I kept trying and trying and trying, and I knew my product was better. And I still believe it was a way better product. But when a competitor is that entrenched, you can't beat them. And then a company called Squarespace and one called Wix started up, and they are really good competitors. And I didn't want to spend any money. I just wanted to write code. So ultimately, I gave up, and I did that about 90 days ago. But until that time, I was still writing code every day and loving it. I mean, ultimately, I was having more fun writing the code than I didn't want really to work or have a business again. I just wanted to write code and try to do something cool that people hadn't seen before. And we did do some of that.
What was your technology stack of choice?
Oh, in that case, I was just using visual. It was all Microsoft. So I was doing SQL and the .NET stuff. And I had it at Amazon with AWS and using Visual Studio. And it was fun. It was a kick. It was something to do. And let me have servers at Amazon so that I could see what AWS was like and how to work with them. And yeah, it was fun. I was sorry to see it shut down.
I'm a fellow C# developer, so
yeah.
So it's got a special place.
I know all those classes better than I want to. Yeah, it's a great technology though, and that is an interpreted language. Mm-hmm. So it is a bit of a I wouldn't say a pig, but it's certainly not as fast as it could be.
So let me wind down with this question, right? With a sentiment, right? There's a saying that says you can't go back, but if by some weird reason you ended up in possession of all the Sierra IP and you got a hold of all the talent again, do you think you could build another Sierra today? And what would you do differently?
Yeah, I asked myself that a lot. Now, even right after we sold Sierra, when things were coming apart, I called a couple of times saying, kind of like, put me in, coach. You don't need to pay me or anything. I just want to see if I can get this thing going again. But for whatever reason, they never called back. So I don't know. Starting up today, it's almost impossible. In that Sierra, all along the way, I was trying to put things in place so that I would stay current with the market and could quickly react to the market. If I started today, I would be forced into using one of the off-the-shelf engines, and that makes it automatically hard to really differentiate yourself. Mm-hmm. The brand names aren't known the way they were back then. We had a proprietary way to talk to our customers via our magazine, and I wouldn't have any of that. I try to think, if somebody gave me, $20 million in cash and said, go out and, fight the battle again. And the other problem is that I'm now in my 60s, and it's a kid's industry. You really have to be able to relate to the players. And at that time, I was one, and I was young, and I understood how they think. And today I don't. I understand how people my age think, and we're not the target market. So it's I think I'd be a better manager, but less able to relate to the customers, and would have wouldn't have 20 years in a row of having put walls in place around me. So it's so I guess the answer is no. I don't think I could do it again. It'd be fun to try. Although when I say that, Roberta and I have engaged in a whole new life. And after Sierra, we started boating. We have a small, big by many standards, but small when you're out in the middle of the ocean boat, 68 feet long that we circumnavigated. And, we were part of the first powerboat crossing by small personal powerboats of the Atlantic. Then we went on to cross the Bering Sea. And we've cruised places from, Croatia to Turkey to Japan, everywhere. And actually, I wound up writing 4 books about boating, and kind of had a second 15 minutes of fame. And that, when we were standing on the street one day, like in front of Amazon, one of their programmers comes out and says, "Are you Ken Williams?" And I said, "Sure." But then I got to play this guessing game. Do you know me from my Sierra days or from the boating days? And that turned out to be the boating days. But that happens a lot. If I'm standing in a marina, then I know that people know us from the boating. But in front of Amazon, I kind of figured it might be Sierra, but the guy was too young to remember that we used to do that too.
Yeah. How many nautical miles have you say you've racked up so far?
Oh, close to 50,000.
Wow.
I've got both a US and a European captain's license, and we've been through 27 countries, and it's a different world. Roberta and I run the boat alone for the most part. On some things like crossing the Bering Sea, we had some other people on board, but mostly it's just us and our 2 little puppies. Oh. And we've gotten the puppies into all those countries. They have their own European passports, and so it's kind of fun.
And then you said you have a new boat coming.
Yeah, I have a new boat, a smaller one. It's smaller but faster. This will be a 60-foot boat. Our other was 68 feet. But we wanted to do some cruising that the other boat couldn't do. That Like they have something called the Great Loop, where you take a boat up the East Coast and down through the Mississippi River. And that sounded fun to do. And well, plus just being able to go faster for a little bit. And our other boat was super slow. I mean, we had to cross the Atlantic at the speed that most people walk at. It was, wow. I don't remember how long it was. I'd say 3 weeks or something to cross the Atlantic. So it's, at 8.5 miles an hour, pretty slow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you can almost swim that.
Yeah, you can almost
not
swim
quite, but yeah, that is pretty slow. I haven't sailed very much, unfortunately. But in any case, I want to thank you very much for your time. Your book, Not All Fairy Tales Have Happy Endings, comes out this October, right?
This October. I know I was sitting editing this morning, but as fast as I can write, Roberta can change things and send me back to the drawing board.
Now, what's the best way to get a copy?
Go to kensbook.com, and there you can register. And as soon as it's available, I'll send an email to everybody, and then I'll throw away the list. I'm not looking to spam anybody, but I'll let people know it's out. And assumedly, it'll be on Amazon. All my other books showed up on Amazon.
Excellent.
So, so assumedly, it'll be there, and it'll be in PDF format or as a regular book. And it's 400 pages, all in color. I'm not looking to make any money on the book. It was just something to kind of fill up time, and also to, I know it's amazing to me. I do not when I was doing TalkSpot, my failed website maker, I hosted something like 160,000 websites over time, and the number one website consistently through all the years was one called SierraGamers.com, which is a kind of a crappy site I threw together right after Sierra, and then quickly forgot about and stopped editing, or curating in any way. But the darn thing just still to this day does tens of thousands of page views every day for no good reason. And there's so many other good Sierra resources out there that I probably should take it seriously, but we kind of moved on to a different life. And but it does show. I mean, there's still a lot of Sierra fans out there, and in the first 24 hours of having that kensbook.com site, I had over 1,000 people register who want to read the book, which is kind of staggering, because it's not like I'm a great writer, but and a lot of the people, 25 years ago, anybody that was buying those Sierra games is well grown up by now. So,
yeah, same here. I signed up, and it's I see it as kind of your way of maybe wrapping up some loose ends. Kind of capping off the legacy, and we're glad to get the story from the only person who can write it. So we really appreciate that.
No, thank you. Yeah, there's parts of the story that have never been told about what went wrong at the end and how it all collapsed. So, and I and a lot of it I didn't know. I mean, as part of writing this book, I've had to go research and read depositions and trace public company filings, and so it's been interesting and enlightening for me too. But so anyway, thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate you talking to me.
All right. Thank you very much, Ken.
Thanks. See ya. Bye.
See ya.